In this video I would like to show you how to make a plaster press mold of the face mask. Here I made a small mask in terracotta clay. Any kind of clay would be good for this project. It is very important not to create any deep undercuts in the nostrils and around the nose wings. They would make it difficult to remove the mask without distortion or damage. I place the mask on the slab of clay and attach it firmly. There shouldn't be any gaps between the mask and the slab, so I fill the space with the small coils of clay. Then I smooth the clay with the rip tool, with the brush and the water. I create the wall that will surround the mask. This is a strip of flexible plastic that I tape together. I place it around the mask about 1 inch away from it. I press the plastic firmly into the clay. Now it's time to prepare plaster. I'm using hydrocoal, but you can use any plaster of Paris. It is sold in most craft stores. When you mix a plaster, you always add it to the water, not the other way around. I keep adding plaster until the island is formed. Now you see big island of the plaster. I sprinkle just a little bit on the side of the bucket and let it sit for about 5 minutes until all the plaster is soaked wet. Then I stir it with my hands just to remove any lumps. I tap the bucket to remove air pockets that are trapped inside. I apply plaster with a brush. The first layer is very important. There cannot be any air bubbles. I am applying plaster with the dabbing motion. It is crucial not to get any air bubbles, especially around the eyes, nose and lips. Here I start pouring the plaster on the side of the bucket. I want to have at least 1 inch of plaster above the highest point of the mask, which is the nose. With the brush, I stir the plaster around the mask to make sure that it gets in all areas. Now I shake and vibrate the mold in order to remove any air bubbles that are inside. When hydrocoal is hard and is still warm to the touch, approximately in 20 minutes, I remove all the clay and plastic surrounding the mold. Very gently I remove the clay from inside. I don't want to scratch inside of the mold. Because there might be pieces of plaster in the clay, I don't save it, I just throw it to the garbage. I remove any sharp points from the edges of the mold. I want it to be smooth and easy to handle without any risk of cutting myself. Plaster, when it's hard, is very sharp. After that, I let the plaster harden for about 2 hours. Then I wash the mold with soap and water and let it dry for about 2 days. Now, when the mold is dry, I fill it up with fresh clay. The first layer is very crucial. I start with pressing a piece of clay firmly into the nose cavity. Each following piece of the clay should overlap the previous one. Press clay firmly and spread it inside of the mold. With the second layer, you don't have to be so precise, but it is important not to trap any air pockets between layers of clay. Just remember to press the clay firmly. To avoid these air pockets, from time to time I pound the clay with the homemade sandbag. With the needle tool I check the thickness of the form. I want it to be even, about 1 centimeter in all areas. Here with the knife I clean the edges of the form. Just remember not to get any plaster in the clay, so be careful. On one side I build up the edge a little bit higher. It will help me to remove the clay when it is still fairly wet. But you don't need to do that. Clay, when it's getting dry, shrinks a little bit, so it's easy to remove from the mold. You just flip it over and you get it. But sometimes I want the clay to be wet, so I remove it from the form much sooner. Sometimes you see a tiny lines on the surface of the piece, but it's easy to remove them by rubbing with the finger or with the brush. Here is the final mask, and with the press mold you can make multiple copies, but I like to modify each one. I spray water on inside and outside of it. I wrap it in the damp cloth and let it absorb the water for about 1 hour. When the clay is wet and flexible, I play with it. By pushing from inside out, I can make the forehead or cheekbones protruding. I can make the face wider or slimmer. I add eyebrows, change expression, and so on. So if you have your mask, be brave, just experiment with it. If you destroy one, you can make another one. Just remember, have fun, and thanks for watching.